He only pawned it because he needed to fix the heater. Winter was hitting hard, and Social Security didn't stretch like it used to. It was just a bronze star, to him at least. Something he'd earned, not something he needed. The pawn shop didn't ask questions. But a day later, they put it in the display window. Not behind glass, not in a case, but taped to a piece of cardboard with a Sharpie sign above it. $5 hero discount. Some laughed. He didn't. He just walked away. But 24 hours later, the shop owner's phone rang. And the voice on the line said calmly, "This is the Pentagon. Leave the metal where it is. We're coming to get it." If you believe respect isn't something to be sold, but something we should guard with our lives, then share this story. Subscribe to Endless Stories, where silence honors more than applause ever could. He didn't look like someone who once wore ribbons on his chest. The winter jacket swallowed his frame. The zipper stuck halfway up, and his gloves didn't match. One brown leather, one gray wool. He walked with that familiar gait. Not broken, just measured. The kind that says a man once marched for miles and now feels every step in his hips. The metal was in a small velvet box, the hinge loose, the fabric worn. He didn't carry it with pride. He carried it like a burden, like something that had waited too long in a drawer, next to folded letters and photos no one else asked about. The pawn shop wasn't new. It had that dust in the corners, bell that never rings right kind of feel. Behind the glass counter was a man in a hoodie and backwards cap, flipping through sports cards, not bothering to look up when the bell dinged. The old man stepped up slowly, took the box out, set it down without a word. The younger man glanced at it once, then again. "Is this real?" he asked, squinting. The old man nodded once. The clerk raised an eyebrow. "That for killing someone or saving someone?" No answer, just silence. The kind that says, "Either way, I don't tell strangers." The offer came next. $50. The old man didn't haggle, didn't flinch, just nodded slowly. "I need to fix the heater." The kid counted cash from the till, handed it over without even offering a receipt. He left with the same posture he came in with, head down, steps sure but not strong. He didn't look back, and he didn't see what the clerk did next. Didn't see him walk to the window, tape the metals box to a scrap of cardboard, and scrawl a sign in thick black Sharpie. $5 hero discount. Didn't see the way two customers laughed at it. Didn't hear the one who said, "Guess being a hero doesn't pay rent." He just walked home, sat by the space heater that wheezed on and off, and stared at the corner of the room where his uniform used to hang. The cardboard sign was the kind of thing that took 30 seconds to make and a lot longer to undo. It wasn't carefully printed or thought through. Just a Sharpie, all caps, thick strokes. $5 hero discount, grinning squinting face. Right below it, the box dangled from a thumbtack, slightly crooked. The bronze star inside caught the window glare, glinting dully under a film of dust already forming. Most people didn't know what it was. Some did and didn't care. The pawn shop got steady traffic. People looking for tools, jewelry, things they couldn't afford new. No one came looking for valor, especially not for $5. The first man who noticed it was a contractor. Tall, bearded, steel-toe boots scuffed and salt-stained from the sidewalk. He paused at the window, looked at the sign, leaned in, said nothing, just stared. His reflection blinked back at him for a second too long before he turned and walked inside. "You guys serious with that metal out front?" he asked, not loud, but sharp. The clerk didn't look up from his stool. "What about it? You selling a bronze star for $5? "Yeah," the clerk said, still tapping his phone. "Funny, right?" The man didn't laugh. "You know what someone has to do to get one of those?" The clerk shrugged. "Kill some guy in the jungle 40 years ago? That's when the air changed." The contractor stepped closer. "That's for valor under fire, for dragging people out of burning trucks, for standing your ground when everyone else is dead. You think that's a punchline?" The clerk looked up now, eyes narrowed. "Dude, relax. It's not even mine. Some old guy brought it in. Needed heater money or something. That old guy probably watched half his unit get blown apart. Cool story. Still $5. Behind them, A woman browsing costume rings turned her head. A teenager with earbuds glanced up from behind a display case. The room wasn't loud, but it wasn't quiet anymore either. That tension, that slow, low hum of something's not okay. The contractor stepped even closer. He wasn't yelling, just standing taller now. Take it down. Not your call, man. Take down. I ain't touching it. Then the store owner came out from the back. Late 40s, button-up shirt with sleeves too short, Bluetooth earpiece still blinking. What's the issue? This guy wants me to take down the war thing, the clerk said. The owner looked at the window, scoffed. Oh, come on. It's a prop. Nobody buys real metals anyway. Probably fake. It's not fake, the contractor said. It's bronze. It's tarnished. It's real. Well, it's not mine, the owner replied, annoyed. You want it? $5. No refunds. The contractor stared at him. You don't even care where it came from, do you? The owner crossed his arms. Buddy, I run a pawn shop, not a museum. If people cared that much about metals, they wouldn't be trading them for grocery money. That landed hard, not just in the room, but with the woman near the rings, who now set one down quietly and left without buying. With the teen near the sunglasses, who pulled out his phone and took a photo of the window. With the man standing outside now, someone in a dark coat, watching from across the street. He didn't enter, he just saw enough. An hour later, the photo hit a local Facebook group. Captioned simply, Bronze Star on display for $5. Is this how we treat service? Within minutes, comments poured in. That's disgusting. Whoever pawned it deserves better. We have vets sleeping in trucks, and this is what we do with their medals? What pawn shop? Then came the share. Then 10 more. Then 50. And somewhere, maybe in an office, maybe in a building with no nameplate and an unlisted number, a phone buzzed. Not from someone angry, but from someone who had authority. Because the next day, the store owner would pick up the shop phone and hear, "This is the Department of Defense. We're aware of a Bronze Star in your possession. Do not sell it. Do not move it. Someone will be in touch." And in that moment, the joke wasn't funny anymore. It never was. But now, someone in Washington had heard it. It didn't take long. By the time the sun set that same evening, the post had over 1,000 shares. Not viral by internet standards, but enough. Enough for a local morning DJ to mention it on the radio. Enough for a schoolteacher to hold the photo up during homeroom and ask her students, "Do you know what this medal means?" Enough for someone, no one admitted who, to print out the photo and tape it to the front door of the American Legion post downtown with 3 handwritten words beneath it. This is not okay. The next day, a former Army medic in town named Carol stopped by the pawn shop. She didn't come in angry. She didn't yell. She just walked straight to the counter and asked, "Do you still have the medal?" The clerk blinked. Yeah, but we're not. I'm not here to buy it, she said. I just want to see it. He hesitated, then pointed toward the window. It was still there. Same crooked box. Same sharp sign. Carol walked up to it, took out her phone and recorded a short video. She didn't say anything, just filmed the display, then turned the camera toward herself. This was my brother's medal too. Different war. Same weight. If this is a joke to you, ask yourself what kind of country you think you live in. She posted it. By noon, it had 85,000 views. Down the street, a tattoo shop took a stand in the way they knew how. They posted a flyer in the window offering free cover-ups for any vet with ink they regret, and a quiet note at the bottom, "Because you deserve more than this town gave you." The coffee shop near the courthouse added a special to the chalkboard. Hot beverage bronze roast $1 for veterans. Not for profit. For memory. No explanation. No fanfare. And that night, in the same alley behind the pawn shop, someone with a can of red spray paint wrote 3 simple letters on the wall. VAL. It wasn't vandalism. It was a name. Veteran Arthur Leland. Navy Corpsman. Bronze Star recipient. 1971. And the man who, 3 days earlier, had pawned his medal to keep the heat on. The town knew the name now. Not because he told anyone, but because someone, a postal worker, a gas station attendant, a neighbor maybe, had recognized him in the blurred image of the security cam footage the pawn shop didn't know was being leaked. And now, they knew who they'd laughed at, who they'd dismissed, who they'd let walk past them, head down, shoulders tight, trying not to be noticed. At the town hall, one of the council members called for a motion. "We should honor him, properly." Another said, "Let's wait, let's ask him first." And a third just said, quietly, "Let's not wait too long," because word had started to spread further. To the VA clinic, to the VFW hall, to a reporter at the local news station, to someone at the Pentagon who'd already placed a call, and to Arthur himself. He hadn't known what they did with the medal. He hadn't seen the sign. He just knew he felt colder when he handed it over than when he'd walked in. He didn't expect anyone to care. But now, people were starting to, and that scared him more than the silence ever had. The next person who walked into the pawn shop wasn't a vet, wasn't media, wasn't angry. He was 17. Hoodie, backpack, scuffed sneakers, earbuds hanging like forgotten ornaments around his neck. His name was Luis. His dad worked nights at the feed store. His uncle had died in Afghanistan when he was 7. A shadowy figure in folded flags and a single photo in the hallway that no one touched. Luis didn't talk much, but he saw the video online, saw the medal in the window, and something in him, something quiet but stubborn, said, "This isn't how it's supposed to go." He didn't say a word when he entered, just walked up to the window, pulled a folded piece of paper from his backpack, and taped it to the glass, just below the medal. It was handwritten in blue ink. "If you can't afford to show respect, close the shop." Then he left, didn't film it, didn't post it, but someone else did. The security cam caught it. The clerk rolled his eyes, but the internet didn't. Within hours, the paper sign was screenshotted and shared across veterans forums. One user commented, "A teenager just reminded us all what the Bronze Star means. Let that sink in." By the next morning, the shop had 3 letters slipped under the door, all anonymous. One was typed. One was handwritten in pencil. The third was written in shaky cursive on Veterans Affairs letterhead. Each carried the same message, worded differently. "Return the medal. Apologize. Before you lose more than just customers." Outside, someone had left a candle burning in a paper cup. Another had placed a single dog tag on the windowsill. It didn't belong to Arthur. It didn't matter. It belonged to someone. That was the point. Across town, a retired Air Force colonel named Marion Fields saw the story on his granddaughter's iPad. He didn't do social media, didn't like attention, but the next day, he showed up at the pawn shop, full dress blues, ribbons gleaming, cane in one hand. He walked in slowly, looked the clerk dead in the eye, and said, "Where's the medal?" The clerk hesitated. In the back, we took it down yesterday." "We didn't mean." The colonel held up a hand. "I don't need your reasons. I was just gonna put it back." "No," Fields said. "You're not." He pulled a folded envelope from his coat and set it gently on the counter. Inside is a letter from the Pentagon's Veterans Affairs liaison. "You're returning the medal today, and you're doing it in person." The store owner came out from the back, red-faced. "We didn't break any laws." Fields didn't blink. "You broke something else." "What's that?" "Your town's trust." He turned and walked out. Didn't buy anything. Didn't wait for thanks. And that afternoon, 2 local TV vans parked across the street. Not because someone called them, but because someone had tagged them in the video of the teen's note, and they knew this wasn't just about a pawn shop anymore. It was about a place that forgot how to honor the people it pretended to admire. At the community center, a veterans quilting group paused mid-project to write cards. Not for Arthur specifically, just for any vet who'd ever had to sell something that should have been sacred. They delivered them to the Legion post in silence. At the high school, a teacher opened her class with one sentence. "Today, we're not studying wars. We're studying what happens when memory fades." She pulled up the image of the medal in the window. then pulled up the photo of Arthur Leland, young, uniformed, the day he earned the Bronze Star. Nobody spoke for almost a full minute. And later that evening, a plain, unmarked government sedan pulled up to the back of the pawn shop. Two men in simple suits stepped out. They didn't knock. They didn't threaten. They just said, "We're here for the medal, and we're taking it back. Not for display, for dignity." Arthur Leland didn't speak at the press conference, mostly because there wasn't one. He didn't return to the pawn shop to accept an apology. He didn't walk into the mayor's office to receive a key to the city. He didn't post a rebuttal online or write a letter to the editor. He just stayed in his one-bedroom rental, heater finally humming thanks to a neighbor who had slipped cash under his door with no note. But the truth about him? It didn't need him to speak. It spoke for itself. It started with a journalist, local beat reporter named Sarah Tran, mid-30s, American, daughter vet who'd never talked much about the war but always paused when the national anthem played. She'd seen the video of the medal in the pawn shop and, out of curiosity, started looking up military records. Took her 2 hours to find him. Arthur C. Leland, enlisted 1968, Navy Corpsman, 3rd Battalion, 4th Marines. Deployed to Quang Tri 1970. Awarded Bronze Star for actions during a 5-day siege near Firebase Ripcord. Citation read, displayed exceptional courage under heavy enemy fire, administered life-saving treatment to 9 Marines, and refused evacuation despite multiple shrapnel wounds. Carried 1 soldier over 200 meters through hostile terrain after helicopters were downed. Acted without regard to personal safety. That sentence. Refused evacuation despite multiple wounds. Hit differently when she learned he'd been living alone for over 20 years. Surviving on VA checks. Fixing his own roof with borrowed tools. Never once asking for assistance. She drove to his address. Knocked. He didn't open. But someone else did. The landlord. An older man with grease-stained hands and tired eyes. "He's a ghost," he said. "Quiet. Pays cash. Never late. Once I offered to fix his porch for free. He said, someone else might need that kindness more." Sarah left a note. Not for an interview. Just, "They remember now. I thought you should know." The story ran 3 days later. Front page. Not sensational. Just facts. Just the truth. The man behind the medal, Arthur Leland, the corpsman we forgot. It included a photo. Black and white. Grainy. But unmistakable. Arthur. Young, lean, eyes dark with fatigue and something heavier. Crouched next to a wounded Marine, wrapping gauze with one hand, holding a rifle with the other. No caption needed. The photo said it all. He gave while under fire, and we let him walk in silence. The story hit hard, because now the town wasn't just reacting to a symbol. They had a name, a face, and a debt. The American Legion Post ordered a plaque. The high school ROTC commander asked to have his name added to the drill room wall. But perhaps most powerfully, the tattoo shop that had offered free cover-ups? They got a request from a young vet who simply asked, "Can you put Leland on my shoulder? I want to remember the man who taught us what service looks like." Arthur never showed up to those events. But he saw the signs. The letters. The candlelight vigil a group of teens held on the sidewalk outside the pawn shop. Not with speeches, but by sitting silently for 30 minutes, each holding a photo of someone who'd served. One of the teens, Luis, the same boy who posted the paper sign, left a message in chalk the next morning, scrawled in bold white under the empty window display. "He never needed you to remember, but we do." And from that point on, Arthur Leland wasn't just a man with a medal. He was the moment that reminded a town what it had forgotten. That some heroes don't fade. We just stopped looking. Started small. A folded flag placed in the library display window, beside a new stack of books about war. The librarian didn't say who put it there. Just said, it felt wrong to leave that shelf empty. A day later, someone taped Arthur's photo next to it. Not young Arthur from the military file, but a candid one, taken from across the street. Him alone, sitting on a bench, wearing that old jacket with the zipper stuck halfway up. The kind of photo you take when you realize someone deserves to be noticed, and you regret not seeing him sooner. Then came the diner. People had always known Arthur stopped by a few times a week, sat in the back, never asked for anything special, tipped in cash, sometimes too much. Now the waitress, Jeanette, reserved that booth. She didn't rope it off. She just left a mug of black coffee on the table at 7 a.m. sharp. And every so often, someone would leave something there. A patch, a handwritten note, a newspaper clipping folded 4 times. Jeanette didn't clean them away. She dusted around them like sacred objects. Next door at the barber shop, Old Ray had always offered veterans a discount. But now, there was a new sign in the window, printed in bold. If you served, we thank you. If you walked past Arthur and said nothing, we still cut your hair. But now you know better. Across town, the pawn shop changed too, not by force but by pressure that didn't stop. The owner took down the sign, removed the display, and for a week, the window stayed empty. Then, one morning, a new item appeared. A plaque. Wooden. Simple. No logos. Just an engraved line. In honor of Arthur Leland, corpsman, neighbor, reminder. Below it sat an empty box, no metal inside. Just space. And a typed message. We don't deserve the medal, but we will earn back the silence. But perhaps the biggest shift wasn't in shops or signs. It was in how people spoke. They asked veterans more questions, but listened longer. They didn't offer thanks automatically. They offered time. When Arthur walked by, people didn't rush to apologize. They just nodded, the kind of nod a man gives another man when words feel cheap, and respect finally found its way back to the surface. The high school invited him to speak. He declined, but the students left an empty chair for him anyway, front row. On the seat was a copy of the article Sarah had written, laminated and folded open to the photo of Arthur carrying a wounded Marine. No one sat there all semester. One Friday afternoon, a mail carrier, young, sleeves rolled, earbuds in, approached Arthur outside his building. He didn't try to talk, just handed him a small package, a new metal case. Not fancy, but solid. Inside was a folded note. You shouldn't have to carry this memory alone. Let us hold it with you. Arthur said nothing, but he kept the box. And in that town, people began looking up more. Not because someone told them to, but because one man walked through their streets every day and showed them what quiet honor really looked like. The invitation was never sent. Not officially. There were no RSVPs, no podium, no flyer with clip-art flags and logos. Just a whisper passed from person to person. Arthur might show up. It was Veterans Appreciation Day at the community center. Usually quiet, polite. Coffee, cookies, maybe a speech from the mayor about sacrifice and legacy. But this year, something was different. People showed up early, dressed better, spoke softer. A local ROTC class had cleaned the entire auditorium the night before, unprompted. The VFW chapter had sent over extra folding chairs. The town florist, who'd once refused to deliver to Arthur's side of town, dropped off 24 white lilies. No invoice, no name. At 10:04 a.m., the room was nearly full. A mix of uniforms and jeans, of people who had fought, and people who had only ever seen war through their father's silences. And then, at 10:07, the door opened. Arthur walked in. No one announced him. No music played. He wore the same coat, the same mismatched gloves. No medals on his chest. But everyone saw him, and not a single person stayed seated. The mayor stood first, then the kids in the back row, then the man with the cane who always came late but never missed an event. Within seconds, the entire room was on its feet. Not clapping, not cheering, just standing, silent, like something sacred had entered, and no one wanted to be the one who missed it. Arthur paused, looked around. You could see it in his face. He hadn't expected this. His hand twitched once, like he wasn't sure whether to wave or turn around. But someone stepped forward. Luis, the boy with the handwritten sign. He walked slowly, met Arthur halfway down the aisle, and held out a single sheet of paper. On it was a drawing, pencil, rough lines, but clear. Arthur, kneeling in the jungle, wrapping a Marine's leg. In the background, helicopters, smoke. In the corner, One line, block letters. You didn't lose it. We just weren't ready to carry it. Arthur took the paper, held it like a flag. Then, for the first time in weeks, he smiled. Small, crooked, but real. Someone in the back started to clap. Once, then stopped. Not because it was wrong, but because applause felt too loud for a moment that big. The mayor stepped forward. No speech, just a box. Inside, the original medal, now in a frame, glass cleaned, properly engraved with Arthur's name and date. Beneath it, in service, he saved others. In silence, he reminded us how to honor them. Arthur didn't speak, just placed a hand on the glass, then on the boy's shoulder, then sat down, front row, alone, and the rest of the room slowly followed. From that day on, the event changed. There were no more long speeches, no PowerPoint slides, just names, stories, pauses. A new tradition began, 1 minute of silence, not for the fallen, but for the forgotten who were still among them. And in that town, no one forgot Arthur again, because now they understood. You don't honor a man like that with noise. You honor him by how you stand when he enters the room. You could feel it in the coffee shop first. The barista who used to sigh at complicated orders now asked older patrons if they wanted their coffee a little cooler, so it doesn't burn the tongue. She didn't say it was because of Arthur, but everyone knew. He'd come in once, ordered black, too hot, didn't complain, just winced, swallowed and said, "Could be worse." That was enough. Then the bank. They changed their policy quietly to offer in-branch priority service for veterans over 65. No announcement, just a sticker on the door, because some waited long enough already. At the school, the history teacher began every Monday with what she called the minute, 60 seconds of silence, not for mourning, but for remembering. She told her students, "We don't just stand for flags, we stand for people we've overlooked." Arthur showed us that. Luis, the boy who'd started it all, launched a project with his classmates. Stories before they're gone. They visited nursing homes and vet centers with a notebook and one question. What's something no one asked you about that you wish they had? They didn't post most of what they heard. They just listened. And when they shared, it was handwritten on boards in the school hallways. No likes, just dignity. Even the pawn shop, yes, that shop changed. The owner didn't sell it, didn't close it, but he did something no one expected. He emptied the front window, took down the guitars, the electronics, the signs, and instead put up a new display, folded flag, a faded uniform shirt, frayed at the collar, and in the middle an empty metal box, with a single line printed below it. Some things aren't for sale. We had to learn that the hard way. People stopped taking shortcuts. They held doors longer, stopped saying thank you for your service like it was a script, and instead started asking, what did it cost you? Do you want to talk about it? Would you like to sit here? At the town council, new business proposals were reviewed with a section called Community Honor Impact. One member said, if we're going to build something, we ask, would it make Arthur proud to walk past it? No one laughed. They just nodded. And as for Arthur, he never changed his clothes. Still wore the same coat. Still walked with the same slow, steady gait. But now people saw him coming. Not to stare, not to idolize, just to prepare, to hold themselves a little straighter, to make space. He still didn't speak much. But once, when someone asked him if all this attention felt strange, he replied with a shrug and 5 words. I liked it better quiet. Then added, but this, I don't mind. Because now the silence wasn't ignorance. It was respect. Now, when people didn't speak, it wasn't because they didn't care. It was because they were letting the moment breathe, letting him breathe. And somehow, in all of that, the town began to feel warmer, not just in temperature, but in tone. Because one man once pawned his medal for heat, and in doing so, taught an entire community how to carry warmth again. Arthur stopped coming around in early March. At first, people assumed it was the weather, the late cold snap. Maybe he just stayed in. The coffee mug still showed up on the diner table. The The front window of the pawn shop still held the empty metal box and plaque. But days passed, then a week, then two. No one said it, but everyone felt it. The town had grown used to his silence, but not to his absence. Jeanette at the diner was the first to ask. She drove by his apartment, knocked, no answer. She left a thermos on the step. The next day it was still there. The landlord found him the next morning. No drama, no suffering, just a man who had spent a lifetime carrying others, quietly slipping away in sleep. The heater was working. The apartment was tidy. On the table, next to a cup of half-finished tea, was a box. Inside, his folded bronze star citation, the receipt from the pawn shop, and a single note on lined paper, written in neat, old-fashioned handwriting. If you're reading this, I guess it means you cared. That's more than I ever asked for. Be kind to the next one. Arthur. No one planned the memorial. It just happened. The Legion Post opened its doors. Chairs appeared. So did flowers, not arranged, just brought. Some in vases, others wrapped in grocery bags. On a table sat his old jacket, a laminated copy of Louis's sketch, and that medal, finally framed the right way. Underneath, he served. We forgot. Then we remembered. Then we stood. People came who had never met him. People who once laughed. People who once said nothing. They didn't speak now either. They just stood in front of the table. Some touched the glass. Some touched their heart. Some just stood, like they had the day he entered the community center, because sitting would have felt wrong. Louis came wearing a white shirt and black tie. He didn't cry, but he brought something folded in his hand. When it was his turn, he stepped forward and placed it beside the jacket. A blank sheet of paper with 5 words in block letters. We won't need signs anymore. At sunset, the flag in front of City Hall was lowered. Not just to half-staff, but held longer. The man folding it paused before the final triangle tuck. Like maybe it wasn't just cloth. Like maybe, for once, they were folding a chapter they weren't ready to close. That night, candles were lit. Not by any organized group. Just people. Ordinary people. One outside the barber shop. One on the diner windowsill. One on the stoop of his apartment. No speeches. No hashtags. Just light. And in that light, the town made a quiet promise. That the next time someone like Arthur walked in, they wouldn't need him to leave. To finally see him. Spring came, and with it, small signs that the town was different now. You could hear it in the way people greeted each other. Not louder, not more cheerful. Just more aware. Present. The waitress refilled coffee without asking. The barber swept a little slower around the older man's boots. The clerk at the pharmacy no longer rushed the man with the shaking hands and wrinkled prescription. No one mentioned Arthur every day. But he was there. In the extra chair left empty during council meetings. In the pause before the national anthem at school games. In the way the high school ROTC cadets now ironed their uniforms. Like someone might be watching who understood what creases once meant. At the pawn shop, the empty metal box was still there. But now, behind it, someone had placed a folded piece of paper. Laminated now, that simply read, "He gave us a second chance. Let's not waste it." A young father walking with his daughter once pointed at the display. She asked, "What's that box for?" He paused, then knelt. "It's for someone we didn't notice until it was almost too late." She thought for a second. Was he famous? The father shook his head. No, he was more than that. He was real. That's what stuck. Arthur wasn't a statue, wasn't a myth. He was a man who pawned a medal because he needed heat, and who, without meaning to, taught a cold town how to warm itself back up. At the library, someone donated a new book, a local publication, simple cover, The Quiet Medal. Inside were stories, drawings, letters. One was from a girl named Emma, 12, who wrote, "I never met him, but I sit in the seat he left empty. And when I do, I try to be kinder." At his apartment building, no new tenant moved in. The landlord kept it unlocked for a week. Door cracked open just enough for people to step in. Not to take, just to see. A jacket still on the hook. The tea stain on the table. The heater humming steady. On the wall, taped above the light switch, "Fix what you can. Let go of the rest." His handwriting, his last note, no signature needed. At the Legion post, a new corner was quietly dedicated. No fanfare, just a worn bench, a small plaque. "This seat belongs to the one who reminded us why we wear the uniform right." And on Memorial Day that year, just as taps began to play, the wind blew through the gathering, light but full, the kind that rustles coats and programs in something deeper. No one moved, no one blinked, and for a moment, it felt like the entire town breathed in together. Because they remembered. They remembered a man who didn't ask to be known, who didn't raise his voice, who didn't even stay long, but who somehow made them all stand straighter, speak softer, and walk kinder. And maybe that's what real legacy is. Not what you leave behind, but what you leave people capable of becoming, when you're no longer there to show them. If you felt something shift in your chest as this story unfolded, if you've ever walked past someone who wore their history quietly, and now wish you hadn't, backhand index pointing right, then help us share this memory. Subscribe to Endless Stories, where the forgotten are remembered and silence speaks louder than applause.